last in his fantasy football league, and the public restaurant visit was his punishment. For her part, managers fired her from the restaurant for doing the post at work, but said it wasn't too much of a shock. Her words, thank goodness he didn't take the relationship any further at the dinner table. And now you know the rest of that story.
What an airhead.
Yeah,
There you
holy
go.
cow. Yeah, they say the best business is done over food, at the dinner table or the golf course. Sometimes bad things can happen as well, right? It may not always be your friend. Holy cow, that's crazy.
Some fancy upscale restaurant, too, in Charlotte with a real pricey menu list. I looked at them going, wow, it wasn't like the corner sports bar for sure.
It's really, you think about restaurants, and it's interesting how things have changed post-COVID with the uptick in the cost of doing business as a restaurateur. Labor costs up. Obviously, the cost of product way, way up. And people they're finding creative ways to manage that, right? I mean, we've been to places where for years we didn't get extra charges for this or that, but all of a sudden, and it's not here in Columbia, but other places, like, you ask for blue cheese olives with your martini. I got charged a surcharge for blue cheese olive in my martini. We went to a restaurant before we went to the show in St. Louis at the Fox over the winter, and I thought, what in the world is this? And then surcharges for swipe fees, for the, that's not just restaurants, but a lot of places are now charging credit card swipe fee surcharges as well, because it's 3-4%.
They're going to get you on your patented Negronis next time, Doc.
Oh, man, I made the ultimate Negroni the other night, and it was I finally got it right. It was so good. I felt so good about that. All right, at any rate, hey,
speak from experience on the latter, but
You got that all taken care of, though, right?
I did. The sun was not out yesterday. I walked up to the Montauk County Courthouse in the rain. Dedication.
Where are the violins? Where are the violins?
Oh, yeah. It was a real long walk from the curb up the steps,
And you had your little rubber boots on, sloshing through and getting your first day of school outfit wet. I mean, no, it was terrible.
What a true American.
That is a real patriot, our producer, Hannah.
Voting is a right that many have fought for us to have.
Yeah,
So.
Good for you. You're right. All right. Well, joining us now is Susan Pendergrass, and she is Director of Education Policy for the Show Me Institute, showmeinstitute.org. And Susan, I hear you're going to be out there lobbying for a special session to raise more money to fund public schools in Missouri. Is that true?
Oh, you know it. Right.
Tongue in cheek. Yeah, what's going on?
I'm the wet blanket. I'm the Grinch, not Santa. I think the phrase we're just going to hear over and over this fall when it comes to public education is this fiscal cliff that we are approaching, that the schools in Missouri are, legitimately approaching a fiscal cliff because for the first time in 4 years, they're going to have to use enrollment numbers that are within the pandemic. They've been using the pre-pandemic student counts now for 4 years, and the federal money's going to dry up. And you put those two things together, Missouri schools got $2 billion in the last round of federal stimulus money, and just about all of that was sent out to school districts to address learning loss. And fiscal cliff isn't like the cliff that Wile E. Coyote, is running and falls off of, and his eyes get big and he drops. Not that kind of a cliff. It'd be like Wile E. Coyote walking for 2 years, passing signs saying, "There's a cliff coming. Watch out," because schools and districts have known about this from the beginning. They've been using the term fiscal cliff since 2021 because the money has to be spent by this September, and it's gone. And, districts are going to have a real rude awakening when they realize if they hired teachers to address learning loss, someone's going to have to pay for them. Some districts have started new programs, or they made their after-school programs, free for parents, which is great, but now someone's going to have to pay for it. And so you're right. The president of the state board is calling for the governor to have a special session to pass what he called, quote, the mother of all supplemental budget, so that districts don't have to actually reckon with the facts. And the facts are there's fewer students and there's no more stimulus money. I mean, we all got checks during COVID. Parents got child tax credit checks during COVID. People who lost their job got much larger unemployment checks during COVID. And we've all had to deal with the fact that that was temporary. But the schools are going to be saying that they won't be able to deal with that.
Yeah, I know you've chronicled through your data and analytics on the Show Me Institute site, how enrollment is going down.
It is.
But expenditures going up. And I just scratch my head. I mean, this is like la-la land, right? I mean, I understand that costs are going up. And so, per capita spending, should probably incrementally go up at some inflationary adjusted rate. I think we all would expect that. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I don't know. On the other hand, I think we've talked about it before, the administrator to teacher ratio, not only in Missouri, but across the nation, has risen over the last 10, 20 years or more. But it just seems as though, wow, it just doesn't make sense, right? I mean, you just add these things up and it just doesn't make sense, does it?
No, it doesn't. But, folks have been making these decisions. School boards and school administrative offices have been making decisions to hire more people and hire more people and hire more people. So student-teacher ratios are down to like 11 or 12, which they used to be in the 20s. And someone's got to pay those people, and teachers sign like permanent contracts. So when and school districts or superintendents will say, look, we can't cut costs because 80% of our costs is staff, and we can't. And it's like you can close school buildings. It's painful. You can minimally not fill teacher vacancies, right? Which there have been folks, the Show Me Institute, among them, the federal government, the state government have been saying, here are things you'd be doing to plan for this coming cliff. Like, don't fill teacher vacancies. Don't start permanent programs. Don't hire staff that you're going to have someone's going to have to pay later when the money runs out. And yet they did it anyway. It's like if you took your stimulus check and bought a car with a car payment, at some point you're going to have to cough it up and pay the car payment. So there's a lot of talk about it, and I know that probably there will be localities who will go to their residents and ask for higher property taxes to make up the difference. You're just going to like I said, I'm the Grinch. It's hard because these are children, and we all care about children. And we want them to learn. But, they can also be very sympathetic. So they're going to say, we can't cut the budgets of our schools. And the fact is they can, and they're going to have to.
Okay. All right. We're talking with Susan Pendergrass, Director of Education Policy at the Show Me Institute, showmeinstitute.org.
Susan, that's the argument we've heard from the Boone County School District, several of the Boone County school districts, the Columbia Public Schools, when the funding came in and it's there to put in new charter schools for the first time in Columbia. And their contention has been right from the Columbia school superintendent down, this will take enrollment away from our public schools and hurt us from a funding standpoint.
Yeah, kids come with money attached to them, right? So if parents choose the charter school rather than the Columbia Public Schools, and now they, if one opens, they'll have the option of doing that, then the public schools, Columbia Public Schools, shouldn't keep the money that's associated with that student, right? If the student's no longer there, then that's, and I know I've read the letters and I've heard all of the wailing and gnashing of teeth in Columbia Public Schools about these charter schools coming, which, number one, there's no charter school application in the works. So that, everyone can relax for a little bit. And also the CPS 93 has every opportunity to convince parents that they are the best game in town and to offer the highest quality product possible. And we don't even know what a charter school might look like. It could be, charter schools can be in all different forms, like dropout recovery, like serving certain populations. We don't even know what it will look like. But yeah, they're already talking about kids leaving and taking money with them. And kids aren't really commodities, right? You should get the amount of funding the state determines that's adequate to educate children, and you should make sure that every dollar is being spent as wisely as possible. But to just say, no, we have to have it because we've had it before and we can't cut our budget, not many businesses or households are run like that.
Susan, I want to play something for you that I just would like your reaction to this. I don't know if you heard Becky Pringle, her now gone viral, end of her keynote speech at the NEA convention recently convened. Take a listen to this, and I'm just curious your reaction to this Becky Pringle, president of the NEA, statement.
NEA delegates, we can do this work. We must do this work. We get to do this work. We will do this work because our students are depending on us to win all the things. NEA, we have to win all the things, all the things, all the things. Our colleagues are depending on us to win all the things.
Susan,
oh my.
That's the president of the National Education Association. Your thoughts?
Well, okay, he needs to take a breath for one thing. Also, there is this passion. There is this within public education or within the public realm. There is this we care the most about kids, and teachers unions have always said that they care the most about kids. But when she says our colleagues are depending on us, I have heard in Jefferson City, I've heard testimony given against school choice saying our teachers have spouses who need their health care and things like that. And this is not a jobs program. And I will tell you, I've seen the NEA office buildings in Washington, D.C., and they are plush and they are very, very nice, very, very expensive. And, they just think that once you sort of get into that group, so that a public education establishment, you're the only one who knows how to educate a child and you know better than their parents. And I hope she regrets that soundbite is out there because, she sounds a little
hysterical. I mean, come on, that's hysterical. And I understand that. But I guess what I'm saying is this is the president of the organization that represents wherever there are unionized schools. I mean, I don't know what the proportion of NEA versus AFT enrolled teachers there is, but I mean, this represents a large swath of the teachers for our kids, just like people are struggling with the leader of the free world that can't put a sentence together these days. I mean, leadership matters, and the leadership that rank and file folks elect matters. And it just concerns me. I mean, I don't know. I just thought it was wild. So, and look, I think you would join me in saying my criticism of teachers' unions is about unions and
That's right.
and the movement and the group thing, rather than I think grassroots, frontline teachers often disagree with some of the crazy woke policies, and I know we saw the influence of the unions. Apparently, Becky Pringle visited the White House more than Joe Biden's neurologist during, COVID, and they influence COVID decisions. So they're sort of out of their lanes when it comes to what they should be about. No,
that's right. I mean, I am very careful when I don't criticize teachers because it is a very difficult job, and I don't know that it's one I could handle. However, teacher union leadership specifically, they have a lot of power, they have a lot of money, and they do things that are in the best interest of the union and keeping themselves afloat, and, including teacher pensions and all of these types of things. And they don't always represent the rank and file well. And, college students who are planning on becoming teachers get hit with joining unions as junior members before they even graduate. They make sure that they bring them in. You don't have to join the union in Missouri. You don't have to join the union anywhere, right? There was a Supreme Court decision. You don't have to. And I think a lot of teachers have found that they don't represent them and the hard work that they're doing, honestly. So, yeah, Randy Weingarten, similarly with AFC,
Yeah.
He said some stuff that you're like, oh, my goodness. Why do you think parents don't trust the school system sometimes when you guys sound like this? But yeah, that's unfortunate.
Well, thanks again for filling us in on some of the goings on here in Missouri's the lobbying on the part of the regulators for more and more money when it just doesn't seem like the facts on the ground support it, and for commenting on the national education scene. Oh, last thing, in the newly released Trump endorsed and Trump born RNC platform, it calls for the abolishment of the Department of Education federally. Your thoughts?
Mm-hmm. They've been calling for the abolishment since it was founded, for the most part. But, the Constitution doesn't talk about public education. That's left to the states. And people have questioned for a long, long time whether there should be a whole Department of Education, given that they are not supposed to involve themselves in curriculum or teaching or any of that. So, there's ways to take the functions and put them other places. And I wouldn't be surprised that increases.
Susan, you have just been given an honorary degree in the Wake Up Mid-Missouri Foundation for Constitutional Politics. You understand that it's not a constitutional function of the federal government. I knew the answer. The Dow Jones was down. This is a pattern we're developing. Dow Jones is really not, I think, anymore the predictor of maybe where most of the stocks are going. Dow Jones was down about 0.1%. S&P 500 and NASDAQ each up between 0.1% and a little bit more. However, today it looks like the futures are in the positive. So all across the board, except for oil, which after a bump from the high 70s to the low 80s in the last couple of weeks is still hovering around $81 a barrel. So things in the commodities markets are fairly stable. And all of this, of course, while the uncertainty about what happens at NATO, whether Biden tanks or whether he, continues to hold up the dam that is threatening to break, but thus far holding up. I think a lot of market movement will probably be blunted until people figure out whether he's going to be the candidate, whether it's still in doubt, or whether he will not be the candidate. And markets do not like uncertainty. Walmart's opening 5 automated distribution centers. Automation is the word of the day. We talked about it earlier yesterday with Brad Jones about people moving to, the people flipping your burgers may be robots flipping your burgers. You're seeing kiosks already.
Mickey D's has become self-aware.
Yeah, that's right. And we'll see Fed Chair Jerome Powell testifying before the House Financial Services Panel. Again, the NATO leaders are meeting as well. And Joe sort of held his own yesterday as he opened the ceremony. There wasn't a whole lot of news there in terms of bumbling around, but he was on teleprompter again, and that's remains to be seen. If he has and when he has later a press conference. A story in the Wall Street Journal we got to talk about. A headline, top of the fold story yesterday. Medicare paid $50 billion to insurers for untreated illnesses. I harp on the medical machine, how it's to serve the machine, the now vertically integrated and increasingly insurance-run operations, hospitals becoming involved, doctors being employed by those hospitals, narrow networks, limited formularies, denials. Well, do you know there's an incentive? The government pays an incentive for Medicare plans and for providers of care, but especially in this case for insurers. And the way it works is if insurers create more diagnoses by looking at your medical records, which they of course have, you think you have privacy? Forget about it. The more diagnoses they pile on, the sicker you look, the more subsidy they get from the market. So this story, investigative reporting by the Wall Street Journal, says that insurers were adding diagnoses your doctor didn't authorize so they could get more subsidies. The government has no business in your health care. I told you so. The Wall Street Journal agrees. We'll be back.
I think just local news is like the most important stuff to me, even though it's kind of like bad stuff going on around me, but it's the most relevant to me.
Where I come from, there's an old plowboy out turning up dirt. Where I come from, there's a preacher man in a cowboy shirt. Where I come from, where a couple boys fight in the parking lot. No, nobody's gonna call the cops. Where I come from. See that door right there? Man, I swear that it ain't never been locked, and I guarantee that it never will. That old man right there in the rocking chair at the courthouse square.
I don't know. I don't think I have a favorite news subject to talk about. I think anything that creates good discussion, anything that you can talk about with other people that
by a neurologist who's a Parkinson's expert, well, a movement disorder expert, including Parkinson's, has made trips to the White House, has been involved in all three of President Biden's examinations, but there's extra trips that he's made there. And the White House said absolutely no Parkinson's, no diagnosis there, no treatment there, nothing to worry about. That's what KJP said in a White House briefing just the other day, Monday, I believe. But we have some other information from a neurologist who is a Parkinson's expert. We'll get to that in a minute. But locally, there was a shooting this morning, Brian. Tell us about that in Central Columbia.
Well, we don't know a whole lot about it right now. Police have not released a lot of information at all. Most of it is coming from ABC 17's Jasmine Halliburton. Would have happened between 12 midnight and, let's say, 1 o'clock in the morning on Lincoln Drive. That's near Providence and Worley. She was out on scene all night, has been doing live shots all night. Police on scene telling her the victim suffering life-threatening injuries, multiple gunshot wounds. It was an adult man who was shot, and she quotes detectives on scene as saying that 2 men have been detained in connection with the shooting. So, again, violence continues to be an issue. We've talked about it quite a bit. If there's one good thing, not that there's much good that comes out of any flash flooding, but if you notice, the violence pretty much stopped. There really weren't any shootings during the 8 or 9 days of all the rain.
It was quiet.
It was very quiet. I didn't want to say anything on the air, but I mean, I noticed those sort of things. It was very, very quiet. This happened overnight. Not sure if it's random. I'll reach out to the police after 9 o'clock, try to get more information, but I don't think they're going to have a whole lot more to say on this. But that is the situation. One person shot near Providence and Worley, Lincoln Street.
I was unable. I was involved in patient care. I could not get away to get out to the procession to honor the escort from the medical examiner's office to Union, the hometown of the fallen assistant Fire Chief Matt Tobin yesterday. Any follow-up on that?
There is a follow-up on that. I'm getting ready to post a story on 939theeagle.com and KWS.com. I have put a story together. There's 2 things. Number one, there will be 2 wreaths that are going to be dropped off today at 2 o'clock. If I can, I'm going to go to the Boone County Fire District for that. That'll be from the U.S. Exercise Tiger Foundation. As far as the procession, the turnout was much bigger than they could ever anticipated. There's a really good story of locally. Obviously, we've covered it in the local media as well. But KMOV in St. Louis also got to the procession in Union, and you would not believe the turnout in Union. Russell Kinsall was live last night. I believe it was in the 4 or 5 o'clock news on KMOV, and he interviewed Gail Blumenkamp. Gail was in Boone in Union. He was sitting right here with us. He looked exhausted. I mean, he's hardly had any sleep. And, he and I were texting back and forth 10, 11 o'clock last night, confirming some details. But what Gail told me is this. He said, the procession turnout, Randy, was unreal. Unreal, his words. He said every town had tons of people and first responders along the route. Man. And obviously we saw a lot of them had American flags, and it wasn't just first responders. These were civilians that came out as well. And one of them was a younger man, and they're all young to me, many of them, but it was a gentleman who spoke on television on Channel 4 in St. Louis, lives in Union, and he didn't know him personally, but the family did. And I'm going to say this guy would probably be 25 years old. I may be off on that, but young guy. And he said, he brought his children and his wife, and he said, we just need to show up because this hero did this for us. I mean, essentially that's what was said.
It's just so heartwarming to hear that.
It's very positive. Very positive.
And that happens when we have fallen soldiers from the area, from the state for that matter. They may be from counties away, but people all along the way pay their tributes.
And take a look. You're absolutely right. No question about that. I mean, indeed. Hannah, producer Hannah, has put together a really nice, and I've been updating our Facebook page, 93.9 The Eagle Facebook, but Hannah has kind of a special emblem, if you will, on there about the Boone County Fire, and you're seeing a lot of comments, about the fire district. But, we're still having listeners ask questions. Were they homeless, these 2 pedestrian civilians? And obviously you heard Gail yesterday. He said they don't know. They haven't been able to get that information. And he said even if they were, we have a responsibility to rescue them. So I know people are asking, and we've asked, but the bottom line is it was a horrible tragedy, and he is. We don't know the funeral arrangements yet; those are being worked on right now. I think most of that will be taking place in Union, Missouri.
Well, and I do want to touch on that. Brian, I know you would never say this, so I'm going to say it for myself. The people that keep asking if that the folks that were being rescued, if they're homeless or not, I've been pretty disappointed with that. Because they're asking in such a way that is insinuating that they should not have made an effort to rescue these people. And that to me is just disappointing that is where folks' minds are at. I understand that homelessness is a problem in both Columbia and Jefferson City. But to insinuate that this human doesn't deserve an attempt to be rescued is despicable, in my opinion.
So they're not just asking for the point of making that we've got to get these people to safer places, other than the streets.
Take a look at the Facebook. 93.9
Is it
Eagle.
pretty?
Well, it's just
it's volatile, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's just
that's a shame.
And I'm trying to handle it delicately. And Hannah brings up a very, very good point, because we've reported on issues involving the homeless, and truly we don't know if they were homeless. We don't know. I mean, even TV reporters were asking as well. But Hannah brings up a very good point, is in that, whether they were or not, they needed to be rescued.
It doesn't matter.
And I also want to say something else in defense of whoever these pedestrians were. I cover, Randy, and Hannah knows this, I call to the point where I probably pester the National Weather Service, especially after the last 9 days.
They told me about that.
They're probably
I'll talk to you about that after the show.
Sick of hearing from me. But I get briefed by them, and they really do appreciate that I'm detailed. But we were not expecting this flash flooding. We were not. And there were no flash flood watches. So these pedestrian civilians, people are criticizing them. Why were they out? If they were homeless, or maybe they were going to work, I don't know. The reality is there is a homeless camp in that area, and no one, whether they were homeless or it was Hannah or I coming to work, we could not have predicted what happened, because that was not in the forecast. Actually, the original forecast called for sunshine. So it's delicate, folks. I'm trying to respond to people on there, but I think Hannah brings up a good point. Let's just try to be respectful. And the bottom line is we don't know. We don't know the answer to that, because the authorities haven't told us.
We had a pretty intense discussion, and I made my feelings known about homeless people. I feel as though they are temporarily lost souls that we desperately need to restore to normalcy. And sometimes that takes a sort of a parental type of an attitude. And we as a society need to say, no, let us help you. Oh, you don't want to be helped? No, we're going to help you because you're a danger to yourself. And let's pray that wasn't the case with these people, that we as a society didn't get them in a safer environment for their own good. This is not a contemptuous thing, right?
Yeah,
and that's a different story than let's not rescue them because they're homeless. Hello? Really? Think that through if that's what you're saying out there.
And I would point out, and Randy, you're entitled to your opinion. I certainly respect it, but I'm going to cover this sentencing Friday. A formerly homeless man, Jesse Williams, convicted of throwing a woman off a bridge. He was homeless. I mean, to the point where 2 homeless people had testified against him. I was in the courtroom. They were scared to death up there on the witness stand. That is a little different when you talk about somebody who also, by the way, this same defendant tried to kill an elderly man in Columbia in a tent about 6 or 7 years ago. John and I reported on it. I do want to emphasize, I think it's very important to note, we don't know if these 2 people were homeless.
No,
we don't
know.
They could have been going to work at, some.
And all of a sudden,
I can tell you, I live on Clark Lane, and I live on Clark Lane, and there's a lot of poverty in that area. That's not the area that the flooding was in, but I see a lot of people they don't have cars. They're walking up and down Clark Lane. They're not being homeless or bums. They're going to work because they're going to work down at the restaurants and they don't have a car. I'm not saying these 2 people are going to work. I don't know, but I do understand what Hannah's saying.
Yeah, Hannah,
and we're trying
to call out people.
We're trying to be respectful.
Yeah, you can't be hostile to people that, because of their bad decisions, they're in a life-threatening condition. I mean, they don't deserve that.
Well,
if they are
public
homeless.
safety folks Randy, you can relate as well as anybody. Public safety folks are like you guys in the Hippocratic Oath.
Yeah.
To do no harm.
I don't care who the patient is. If they're sick and they need my service, they get my very best ultimate care. It doesn't matter.
And Gail made it very clear they have an obligation to do them. But Randy, again, I would just say you mentioned bad decisions. If they were, and I don't know if they were homeless, we don't know, but no one could have predicted. We weren't even supposed to get serious rain. So even if they were in their camp, they couldn't.
I was saying generically.
Okay,
just because someone maybe makes a series of things that leads them down a bad path and they end up in a bad place, they don't deserve what they get. You know what I mean?
This is not directed toward one particular person, and maybe it's drawing too long of a line between the two dots, but a lot of the same people that are saying or insinuating even that these people didn't deserve an attempt at rescue, they're the same ones screaming for pro-life causes.
See, I haven't noted.
Life is life. Life is life. Okay.
Life should be protected.
Well, okay. Speaking of pro-life, it makes me think of religious things, which makes me think of partially the Catholic Church, other churches, which makes me think of this priest.
Oh, the priest.
What about the priest, John? What's going on with this priest who embezzled money? What's up?
Well, we've been on this story.
Or allegedly, I don't know.
Yeah, we've been on the story for a long time because initially it was a church internal investigation, and now the former Mid-Missouri priest, a lot of folks know him, Father Ignacio Medina, has pleaded guilty to federal criminal charges that he sent his sister a $100,000 check stolen from his church in Wardsville, and also admitted to writing a $200,000 check from the same account while he was the pastor of St. Stanislaus in Wardsville.
Wow.
Those were the same findings that the internal church review found about Father Medina as well, and he could face up to 10 years in prison, in a federal prison.
And John brings up a very good point. And for our Columbia listeners, I mean, for our KWS listeners, what was his nickname? Because he's been here in Columbia, John. Father, you said Ignacio?
I remember
he had a nickname, and I can't.
Father, what a waste!
Yeah, but he was in St. Stanislaus, well known there. John, as I recall,
pastored St. Martin's as well.
St. Martin's, definitely at St. Martin's, but I believe he was here in Columbia at Sacred Heart for a time. Does that sound?
He was.
Sacred Heart briefly. I think I'll go to the texters. Wow. I'm going from memory, but he was all over these areas. But the allegations in the indictment, and again pleaded guilty, were that he would take money, again, according to the court documents, he would take money, these donations, and then send it to his sister, but they weren't without their approval or whatever. So he offered to pay it back. Will he get prison time? I don't know. But that's when you get the feds involved, the FBI is involved, and the U.S. attorney, it's pretty serious.
Well, you think about people who take their first penny earned or their first 10 pennies earned and tithe before they do anything else. But there is some dispute, and the White House is vehemently denying that there's any underlying neurologic condition. This is KJP on Monday.
What I can tell you is that the president has seen a neurologist 3 times, and I read to you what the neurologist has said, and I read to you the last line. I could say it again. No findings which would be consistent with any cerebellar or other central neurological disorders such as stroke, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, or ascending lateral sclerosis. That is from February. Has the president been treated for Parkinson's? No. Is he being treated for Parkinson's? No, he's not. Is he taking medication for Parkinson's? No.
Okay, that was KJP the other day, right? Then we move to this from Parkinson's expert Dr. Tom Pitts on NBC yesterday. This guy's a Parkinson's expert. Here he is.
It's early on. If you're just presented with like hallucinations, that could be a variety of things, or just the cognitive problems. That could be Alzheimer's versus Parkinsonism, and that becomes a little nebulous. But once you start manifesting the hallmark motor symptoms, right? Slow movement, rigidity, mass facies, hypophonia. I mean, if a med student did not pick Parkinson's on the test, they'd be remediated.
So let me ask you, you're a Democrat, you're a doctor. You sound like you're frustrated with what the White House is saying.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, because, I'm an American before everything.
Okay, so there's a Democrat, Parkinson expert, and he mentioned rigidity. What he was talking about is the way the president does not swing his arms as much when he walks. When he turns en bloc, sort of like a robot, without sort of moving his head to the side. It's all one whole movement of his body, pivoting, at his feet. Hypophonia, meaning this kind of a thing when Joe Biden's talking like this, like he did all of the debate. The masked faces, what we talk about is when we describe in the medical document, a person has a flat affect, we'll say, well, the faces, meaning the facial appearance, the body language as it applies to the face. Masked faces means that sort of blank, vacant stare, like I give Hannah when I'm trying to play audio and it won't play, or when audio is playing and I don't intend it to play.
Or you are, trying to insinuate somehow that I'm the one playing audio.
Well, he doesn't have the weight of the free world on his shoulders at the time.
Yeah, true.
But and and the rigidity is pretty obvious, But so how can both be true? The guy from Walter Reed, the neurologist who's examined him 3 times, is most recently, February, John?
Yeah, and they said he was even at the White House to look at the service members who served there to see if they had TBI issues or something. It's like, come on, guys.
Now, in fairness, it's dangerous for this Tom Pitts to make a diagnosis